Hello, my friends. My name is Naveen Bhasin, and you're watching podcast with Naveen Bhasin. Today we have a very special guest, and you can imagine from this guest we can learn a lot of things. The reason being, she is highly multi-talented. She has lots of qualities. Moreover, her family contributed a lot for Indian people. So we can welcome our guest, Honorary Consul General of Montenegro in India, Dr. Janice Darbari. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you for calling me to your studio.
Thank you so much, ma'am. You graced the occasion of our podcast today, and we would like to know, ma'am, you are the first Indian woman in India who had the Montenegro mission in New Delhi. So, how was your journey from a student to achieve success in India, ma'am?
Well, life is a journey, and sometimes what you don't even imagine, it happens, but you continue because you want to discover life. Whether there are ups or downs, it happens to everybody. But as you embrace life, there are so many decisions you have to take, which start to knock on your inner conscience. And when you start knocking on your inner conscience, the spiritual self, which is very sublime, surfaces. And when it surfaces, that's when your journey really begins. Otherwise, you're living on the tip of the iceberg.
Okay. So nice to hear about these things, ma'am. Actually, I would like to say you are a woman, you are a motivation for many women in India. And if you talk about women empowerment, I think your name should come along with the others revolutionaries ladies in the world, ma'am. You were the emissary of Macedonia. You were the brand ambassador of peace in the Balkans, madam. Please tell us about it.
Yes, absolutely true. In fact, it was a very challenging task. And apparently, when we had written the book on Commonwealth and Nehru, it had struck a note in many people's minds that you had discovered a very important part of history. Because, the book, Dominique's book, Freedom at Midnight, Dominique and Lepaire's book, Freedom at Midnight, was out, and the Commonwealth Conference was taking place. So at that time, Mr. Natwar Singh was the secretary, and he said, well, the Queen is coming to India. We need to have a good rebuttal to this book because it says freedom was handed over to us on a platter. So he looked at my father and said, Professor, your daughters know a lot about, they've been interviewing heads of states like Zia, Arafat, and Eugenia Charles of Dominica, Palestine issue they were talking about. So they are aware of negotiations of power. So yes, we wrote the book Commonwealth and Nehru, which was a dialogue of how, in fact, the secret papers of the cabinet committee meetings which took place in Britain is what we had managed to highlight. It was a major thing for the Indian government also to read at that time, that how Nehru negotiated with the British our status, that it should not be within it as a dominion status, but as a republic. So now when you understand these concepts, foreign governments look upon you as a person who is a person who understands how to negotiate in the power bloc. Because the power bloc internationally is very sensitive. You have to carry people with you of a different type. This is not the common man you're talking to. You're talking to people who are learned, people who have been in different lobbies of different countries in the world. So when Branko Chervonsky, who was the Prime Minister, asked me to be the special emissary of Macedonia to India, he told my father, Professor, your daughter loves staying in India. And we need somebody who will carry our voice to India. Only 35 nations have recognized. And now, if India recognizes, I think it will be a major victory. So when I came to India, of course, the press played it up. They said, after Alexander, it's Janice. And they wrote things like the Amanullah Khan of Kashmir. I mean, I was surprised to see these headings. But yes, it didn't bother me. That's when I said life is like a tip of the iceberg. You discover so much within yourself. And then I used to look at people and smile and say, well, I think the principles of non alignment are set in place in Indian foreign policy. And I talked about it. And I think many of the officers turned around and said, fine, what she's saying is actually correct. And when they recognized Raja Dinesh Singh was at that time the Minister of External Affairs. And
Okay.
so he turned around and said, well, she's right. And then I requested his daughter actually. I said, why don't you raise a question in Parliament? So I went into an intensive lobby with the correct people at the correct time of how to get the principles of international placed well on the political scene. And it was placed very well, I must say that, because at the end of the day, India recognized within 2.5 years. And when they recognized Macedonia as FIREM, the exchange took place in the United Nations. And when it did take place, out here in India, it was like, should we give Janice the credit or not? But then, for me, it wasn't anymore a credit or not a credit. It was, I have done something for the world, because it was very important to bring the tenets of peace back. Because one side, Macedonia was, it had the Bulgarians, it had the Turks on the other side. And there was very sensitive issue with Greece. Now, in that, when you walk like a trapeze artist, you have to carry every nation with you. And I managed to do that. And so I'm very happy that when it happened and my father and me were walking into the Chinese embassy, Mr. Weisner, at that time, he was the American ambassador, he turned around and said, my dear girl, you've done it. And I looked at my dad and he said, well, that's exactly what happens in international diplomacy. So my father was like my guru, because he used to tell me whether I have taken the right steps or not. So that's how the name got so popular in the Balkans. And everybody used to look at me and they used to turn around and say, you're our sestra, which means sister.
Okay.
So it's a very loving way of, I think, getting written into the history of Macedonian foreign policy. And so it was a very glorious moment for me also. And then, of course, when Montenegro, they said, you be the head of mission in India for Montenegro as the Honorary Consul General, I said I accepted it. And I knew, again, it was another challenge. And it was a very peaceful transition, which, of course, Kofi Annan, the Secretary General of United Nations, put it very beautifully, that Montenegro's independence showed the political maturity of the people. And that's very important when through a non-violent method, through a referendum, a nation established its tenets internationally. So Montenegro was something like I loved doing, because it was very close to my heart, peace, beauty. And Montenegro is so beautiful that if you see it, you would yourself turn around and say, now we know why the people are so loving, peaceful. Why did Kofi Annan say they are, a symbol of political maturity in a democratic way, which is very important, following non-violent methods.
Oh, wonderful, madam. What a great speech that you gave us, and we got to know many things from your thoughts. Ma'am, I have heard your father, Mr. Shatrughan Saroop Darbari, and your grandfather, Jagdishwar Nigamji, who contributed for the Indian society by participating in the Quit India movement, ma'am.
He was, my grandfather, Jagdishwar Nigam, was an ICS officer of a 1923 batch.
Okay.
In fact, he was a genius in many ways. And the Britishers recognized his talent for mathematics and revenue collection. And also they knew that he knew how to handle the kitty. Okay. When you were ruling, finance is a very important role.
Yes,
in nation building. And so the Britishers really respected him. And when he started his career, the Mr. Moody, who was there as a director of industries, he was a Britisher, he saw his talent and he said, Mr. Nigam, in Kanpur, you're going to be the first director of industries, an Indian one. And so my nana was made the director of industries. And I don't know, but many people have forgotten that Kanpur was the financial hub of India. And Kanpur being the financial hub of India to be the director of industries meant all the Indian industrialists. Today, you may talk of Padampat Singhania or you may talk of the Patars, anybody, they all had to get their recognition from the director of industries to be established in UP. And it's a long, very interesting way of how he built it all up, how he slowly would push the Britishers into doing gently the labor reforms, land reforms, but not saying so, but making sure that the kings, I mean, the Rajas of the small provinces were more humble and they would help the poor people, because he always told them that whatever I'm going to do, these poor people who don't have even sometimes a morsel to eat, because the way the Britishers were ruling and the way they were crushing emotions was very clear in his mind, because he was a Bundelkhandi. He was born in Moranipur, Jhansi. His father was the reader of a court, and he used to accompany his father at a very young age because his parents did not want him to pick up the arms. Again, non-violence. And so he said, better to educate the son. So when the child was growing and he was hardly 7 years old, he in fact told his own father that, Papa, wipe your tears off. One day I'll sit in that seat and I will give justice to India. So you can imagine a small boy, what he establishes is his very strong feelings for justice.
Great, ma'am.
So when he got the chance as an ICS officer, he was a topper. And when his father asked him, how will you do it? He said, well, I'm going to study so hard, so hard. There's a line in Hindi which says, Hum sabko pichhad denge. I will leave everybody behind and I will top. So he did it. He used to study under the midnight lamp. He used to read a lot of books. And his father and his elder brother, who was 15 years older to him, Anandi Prasad, he actually was a lawyer. So he learned a lot of things about law. So what would you say is that Kismat ki jo kahani hai, and he being a Moranipur, being a Bundelkhandi, being from Jhansi, and every day hearing how the Britishers crushed the feelings in 1857, and then to get into the ICS, you can imagine how the Britishers looked at him. Now he had to win the Britishers' hearts. He said, if I do not transform these British people into our thinking, he used to carry a small Bhagavad Gita or a Hanuman Chalisa with him, and he used to read it to him, and he'd say, what's this monkey god? But, he took pride, and then they used to say, well, he is one of our colleagues. He's an ICS officer. So naturally, they would give him that space. They would want to know more about what he was saying, because he would say, this is how you're going to link up with India, the spiritual base of India. And you cannot say, what do these Indians do? And we don't understand what their prayers are all about. You have to understand, because this is how you are going to get your good revenue from these people. So, he used to convince both sides. And in fact, we're showing this in our movie, which we are planning to make. It's going to be called The Administrator. And it's going to take, it's about the time period of 1942, when my grandfather decided to give freedom. As an officer, he had his rutba, jise kehte hain, because he'd been to London, he'd studied in Cambridge. So what happens is he had made friends with Attlee. Attlee was in the labor. Plus, he had the same values, human values, labor and all that. Whereas Winston Churchill was the aristocrat, different type, always thinking of becoming the prime minister, became the prime minister. And he wanted a strong rule. And he had the person like Wavell, the commander-in-chief, the military. So it's always, I think, even today, it's a bureaucrat who will turn around and tell a military chief, you can't do that. These are people. It's a democracy. Let us try and see if we can solve a problem without going into straight military rule. And that's exactly what my grandfather did. And when he raised the voice of the people of India, because Gandhi, Nehru, everybody was arrested on August 8, 1942, when Quit India started. And so within 10 days, despite emergency, shoot at sight, Section 144, he turned the tables over.
Okay.
And when he turned the tables over in Balia by doing what he wanted and he desired as a child, was to give India independence, he did it. When he wrote on the file, deposit the guns. And he had the guts to write it. And the Riazuddin Ahmad, in fact, this is a beautiful story of how even the Muslims in India never wanted the partition, because Riazuddin Ahmad knew what Modi was doing. He was going Jinnah. There used to be a strong lobby going on in the ICS corridors, and they knew that certain officers were going already into the fold of Mr. Modi, and they were already talking of uh, a Muslim state and whatnot. And when these two revolted, Riazuddin and my grandfather together, it became like a big talk in the corridors of power. It was like a shock for the Britishers that an ICS officer and the police, the superintendent of police, have revolted. So they called him Baghi. And that's how the name Baghi Balia became so famous in India.
Yes, ma'am. You're right, ma'am.
So these are, which, I mean, when we released our book, that book was released. My mother, she was the daughter. She gave us all the true stories. Plus, we got the Home Ministry file of 1942 from the National Archives from India and in Britain. And we published it. And that book is now officially on the Government of India portal, Cultural Ministry's portal. Historians have acknowledged this. So it's been a very important moment for the world to see that how one day of peace was architected by an ICS officer writing Deposit the Guns. And that's when I remember when we were doing the book release, some of the ambassadors said that we wish we had officers like this. So much of destruction which takes place in a district will not take place. So India again became that particular source of inspiration of from the grassroots.
Yes.
How an ICS officer of an Indian origin, who was British, was able to put the tenets of peace, Atlantic Charter, United Nations, which formally grew, and into place. So that's how my family, when everybody talks about it, they said, once again, you're doing the same thing. Your father did the same thing in United Nations. He was the right hand to Krishna Menon.
I think your father also was, I think your father was in the delegation.
Yes, in the United Nations.
In the United Nations with Krishna Menon.
Krishna Menon. He was there for a good 7 years. And which at that time, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, all the crises were being talked about and independence was given. So India supported it. And I'm very happy to say my father was the person who used to do all the research work and give it to Krishna Menon and said, now these are very important points for you to speak on. And then, of course, the Suez Canal crisis was there at that time. So he sort of, as I was also getting into this field of diplomacy, he would brief me on, you see, Janice, this is how the negotiations take place. Then he was a visiting professor at Columbia University, and the dean would come and listen to his political talk. So you can imagine, that when you grow up, like my grandfather grew up in the court and actually saw how to give justice. So when he gave justice, because an ICS officer had criminal powers and civil powers together. So what he wrote stayed, and he knew how to do it. The same thing, if I look at it, my father was able to brief Krishna Menon at that time, that this is exactly what I have researched on, and this is what can be done. So, and then further on, when I had to negotiate for Macedonia and India, all these things, when you put it into place, you can do things in a way without war. Today, everybody feels war is the biggest way of projecting the strength of a country. But the truth is, it is our civil servants, our democracy, which is the strength of a country.
Absolutely right.
Somehow, people have missed out on it, and bureaucrats have not been able to rise to the time. This time, I would feel at this time, bureaucrats have to rise more than just political people. Because political people are actually looking at their egos. They're not thinking of the people and the destruction that's taking place.
You're absolutely right, ma'am.
So it's very, very important to put the tenets of peace, principles, and of United Nations into place. And United Nations is a very forceful body, but everybody has to understand how to move motions in the... it's a game of chess. If you know how to play the game in a correct, seasoned way, you can put things on paper, you can put dialogues, you can give good speeches, you can get things sorted out. There is no need for taking to weapons.
Okay. No, you are absolutely
There
right.
is no need.
The path of non-violence and peace is always, ma'am, commendable in order to resolve all the conflicts in the society or in the world. And ma'am, you also brokered the deal in the Northeast we call the Assam Accord. So please tell us about that.
It's just exactly what I just said. The young Assami young students at that time, they all were up in arms and they wanted to. Bombs were everywhere, and after the Delhi massacre took place, Indira Gandhi was very shocked that such a thing could take place also in Assam. 2,000 people died. And from there was born this Assam agitationist, whether it was Prafulla Mahanta, whether it was Pradeep Hazarika. They're all Deegan Barua. I remember they all came over to my place because I challenged them in their own ground in Assam Bhavan. I just went with my dad and I said, "Who are these guys putting India on fire?" And that was it. I mean, we sat down, talked to them, dialogue. My father told them the same thing, that if there is no dialogue, today you say you want independence, but then who are you going to look for in defense?
You're absolutely right.
We have a border with China, and we have to understand. Then I think all of those youngsters, for the first time, there was somebody to talk to them and make them understand the depth of nature of what they were doing.
Oh,
And
okay.
that's how they finally understood. And then they said, you have actually shown us the light.
Okay, great,
So
ma'am.
that's how the Assam Accord actually came in.
Okay, thank you so much for these beautiful insights about the Assam Accord. Madam, your father, grandfather's contribution, and you are also continuing the legacy of your family in India. Ma'am, in our country, our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, who is leading the country nowadays. So, how do you like the leadership of our Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji?
He's dedicated to India in every way, and it streams from his personality. He's trying his best, but there is a lot of political play all over the world. And I'm quite sure he will be successful in whatever he wants. And he has been successful, and I wish him the best for
Yes, ma'am.
what he's doing. So let's hope everything is internationally is able to see the day of light as we want towards world peace.
Okay, great, ma'am. Thank you so much. You are the only one Honorary Consul General in India who is inspiring other people. In Montenegro, as we know, in 21st June is the International Day of Yoga in India. We celebrate yoga. In Montenegro, as you are the only one who is you can say the closest to Montenegro, ma'am. You're very near to Montenegro. You have experienced this country. Ma'am, do you think Montenegro people practice yoga?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, they do practice yoga. They enjoy Yoga Day also. And in fact, you see, Montenegrins, they have a fantastic climate. I remember once when there was a medical tourism meet in Delhi. So I was asked to speak, and I turned around and said, "Well, when they come to India for their treatments, I would suggest everybody goes to Montenegro because their recovery will be faster and better." So it's a touristic place.
Okay, ma'am.
And being a very beautiful spot, it's called the Pearl of the Mediterranean.
Okay.
And when you're called the Pearl of the Mediterranean, we have the Skadar Lake, which is a heritage site. We have Kotor. We have something called the Valley of Cats also, where we have these, they're given so much of love. And then we have a beautiful terrain of mountains because the Dinaric Alps end in Montenegro. Then we have the Adriatic Sea, where the billionaires come and they use our ports, and they are in fact parking there. So that's a very big business by itself for Montenegro. And then we have 7-star hotels, we have 5-star hotels, we're coming up with a beautiful golf course. So Montenegro is all set, and it's already, I think, now one of the top hot spots for tourism. And you can imagine that within these, since I've been the head of mission of Montenegro in 2008, 1st January 2008. This year, 17 years.
Okay, congratulations, ma'am.
Thank you. So it's special. I did an Indo-Montenegro poster painting competition, educating all the schools in one of my national days
Okay.
in 2016. And I would say 100 schools participated. And we have beautiful paintings. I'll show you some of those paintings. They are remarkable. And in the same tone as we held the National Day here, and the paintings were unique, I took them to Montenegro, and the Foreign Ministry in Montenegro also exhibited these paintings in the schools.
Oh,
So it
wonderful.
won
It's
a lot
great
of
achievement.
acclaim on TV, news, and press. It was a very big coverage.
Okay.
So I did. Then after that, the children of Montenegro naturally wanted to know more about India.
Oh,
And
great,
they are the
ma'am.
future hopes, because that's the way you build diplomacy. It's not only on, I would say, just building a bilateral, but actual education, actual culture is like Mr. Yuri when he was the UN head. He came to the school. He said, Janice. I said, what? He said, you know what? You've actually got all the youth talking.
Absolutely.
You know,
right, ma'am.
thousands of the Tagore International School had all their students out with the flags of India, Montenegro.
Oh,
So
wonderful,
what a
ma'am.
tribute, what a beautiful day. And then we had yoga,
Yoga,
which I come
absolutely
back
right.
to your yoga. And in the yoga, I had requested the Gandhi, they have some institute out here. I had requested them to do the yoga poses and make the word Montenegro
Montenegro through yoga poses.
through yoga poses.
Oh, wonderful,
And
ma'am.
it was beautiful. So, when you want to do something, the creative edge to your mind,
Absolutely right,
it
ma'am.
plays a very big role in creating happiness.
You're
And
absolutely
when you
right.
have a happy moment, you remember the country Montenegro.
You are right, ma'am. Madam, I think with your presence, which is very
Yes.
important in India, because you are the only one who can tell us more about Montenegro.